ANC announcing its 80 additional NEC members. The names of the 80 members, of course, were due to be released last night, but vote counting at the ANC National Conference continued until past midnight. So we've got more than 200 candidates who made it onto the ballot. The 80 members will now join the top 7 officials already elected to the NEC. Now joined in studio by SABC News political editor Mzwandile Mbeje, who is going to discuss this list with me. Interesting words there by, Fikile Mbalula, saying that this is a youthful list, or, NEC list. It's an energetic group of people. It's a good mix. But saying, of course, that we have got a lot of work to do, and we will make sure that members obviously do the work. But let's talk about then just some of the interesting names that are on there, Mzwai. So we know that Sihle Zikalala and, in fact, Mdumiseni Ntuli are in those top numbers of, people who got the most votes in the 2000. I mean, Sihle tops the list with 2,218 votes. Total eligible delegates, we know that were 4,436 versus the actual number that voted. So what does it say, especially if you look at those key people who have made it into the top numbers, like Sihle Zikalala, Duduzi Manana, Ronald Lamola, Mdumiseni Ntuli, and Abekicele, just to name a few?
I think when you heard Fikile Mbalula say, I feel like I'm presiding over the Youth League.
Yeah.
Because these are people he has served with. And in fact, now as Secretary General, I think they'll be able to relate, because most of these people have worked together. In fact, some of them, so he worked directly with them. So one of the things that the delegates of the ANC have done in this conference was perhaps they've responded to the call that South Africans are growing younger. And then you need an ANC that reflects South Africans. And then they've produced this list. So it's very, very youthful, and of course mixed with a bit of experience. And obviously, I'm not even going to talk about the issue of gender parity, because it's now legislated in the ANC, so that's a given, so it's a 50-50. But in terms of the people that have come onto the list, it's really, really interesting. In fact, as you and I were even speaking outside of camera, so it would be interesting to really see what the president's next move would be.
Absolutely.
Obviously, he doesn't have to fire those that are there, but I guess given this kind of mandate, he already can see what South Africans are seeing in terms of saying, we are a youthful country, so we do want to see ourselves in perhaps the governing party.
Yeah.
But
just talking about those names that we are seeing that are a little bit of a surprise. So, for instance, he did answer a question around Bathabile Dlamini, who has made it onto the list. And of course, another surprise is Andile Lungisa. Just talk to us about those names that have made it onto this list.
Maybe not a surprise. It's just that these were the names who were spoken about, because there were issues around them. So we've always known that they were quite popular within the ANC structures. But perhaps the point you may want to raise is given where we were going to the conference, who was backing who had a particular perspective going somewhere. And then you'd have people like Thandi Mahambe Hlala, you would have people like Supra Mahumapelo, even Andile Lungisa himself, and Bathabile Dlamini. So those were the people who were known to be not backing, for example, the current president. And then they've made it there. In fact, it will be interesting to see how that NEC responds to the various challenges that they'll be presented with, because you can see people in terms of going to the conference, many of them actually, it's not necessarily the majority, but many of them so had a different perspective. So how that will be put together will be very, very interesting to watch.
So earlier on, you just mentioned the fact that, one has to obviously look at what President Cyril Ramaphosa's next move is. And I think largely that is as a result of those that did not make it on to this list. I mean, you look at the likes of the Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa Manakula, of course we knew about Naledi Pandor, but the Jeff Radebes of the like. So tell us what is likely then to happen with some of these people who are in cabinet not being on this list?
Well, I think the Secretary General has already indicated that he will be surprised if the President is not already perhaps applying his mind around this issue. Not necessarily firing people, but I do get a sense that some sort of reshuffle will happen, because I think if you get given a mandate by your party, the governing party, and then it presents to you a particular list of people, so you may want to include those people. You don't necessarily have to do a wholesale change, but also do acknowledge that I've seen what we have done, and perhaps this is how I should go about. The position of the transport minister, we already know that is already vacant, because, well, vacant in inverted commas, because I know that Fikile Mbalula is going to vacate it. Secretary General is a full-time job at Lutuli House. So already there's an appointment that needs to be made there. But given that you want to strengthen, given that you want to stamp your authority, given that there is this vibrant NEC, I guess you would want to have that reflected in your cabinet. Of course, not losing experience. But I wonder, I've just been looking at the communists there. Of course, I did. Someone like David Masondo is there. Someone like Butima Namela. But you see that some of the senior members, as you have said, so are not there. I don't know what that means, but
I'm sorry, we have to wrap up. But I mean, all roads now lead to what will be decided on and what will be spoken on the 5th of January. Of course, that this national conference was adjourned, but of course the work still continues. And one of the questions actually that Fikile Mbalula responded to was Mzwandile Lungisa, and he said that a decision about him, whilst the decision about Bathebeli Dlamini has been made, a decision about Mzwandile Lungisa will be made by conference on the 5th of January. So again, so much to unpack and so much to see. But thank you so much for your time.